never expected my world to crack open during a family dinner, but that's exactly what happened last Thursday. My name is Callie, and until that night, I thought I had the kind of life people envied: loving husband, adorable 3-year-old. And the kind of family support system most people only see in movies. The first warning sign came when my father cleared his throat in that particular way he does before making important announcements. We were all seated around his mahogany dining table, the one that had witnessed 20 years of family celebrations and confrontations. "Jake," my father said, setting down his wine glass, "I've been watching your work at the company. And I think you're ready for the next step." He paused, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "We're opening a new branch in Seattle, and I want you to head it up." I turned to Jake, expecting to see his face light up. This was exactly the kind of opportunity he'd been working toward for the past 5 years. Instead, I found him staring intently at his plate, pushing around the remains of his salmon. That's quite an offer, Richard," Jake finally managed, his voice oddly strained. "When would this start?" "We're looking at a 3-month timeline," my father replied. "Plenty of time for Callie and Noah to get everything arranged for the move." The silence that followed felt heavy, like storm clouds gathering. Jake's knuckles had gone white around his fork, and I noticed a slight tremor in his hand as he reached for his water glass. "Actually," Jake said, "I was thinking this might be better as a commuter situation. At least initially." My mother's fork clattered against her plate. "But surely you wouldn't want to be separated from Callie and Noah?" she asked, voicing exactly what I was thinking. "It's just temporary," Jake said quickly, too quickly. "Until we see how things pan out. Seattle's expensive, and with Noah just settling into his preschool routine." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Jake, we've talked about moving before. You always said we'd go wherever your career took us. As a family." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Things are different now, Callie. Noah's at a crucial age. And your web design business is doing so well here." "I can design websites from anywhere," I countered, watching his face carefully. "And Noah's 3, he'd adjust quickly. He's always been adaptable." My father leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Jake, this position requires a full-time presence in Seattle. It's not something you can manage long distance." "I understand that, sir," Jake replied, finally looking up. "I just need some time to think it through. Maybe explore other options." The conversation moved on to safer topics, but I barely heard them. I was too busy replaying the past few weeks in my mind, the late nights at work, the mysterious phone calls he'd step outside to take. The way he'd grown increasingly distant with Noah and me. Later that night, after we'd put Noah to bed, I found Jake in our home office, supposedly catching up on work emails. He barely looked up when I entered. "Want to tell me what that was really about?" I asked, perching on the edge of his desk. What was about?" He kept his eyes fixed on his computer screen. "The dinner. The job offer. Your reaction." He sighed, finally meeting my gaze. "Can't we talk about this tomorrow? I'm swamped with this project, Anne." "No," I said firmly. "Something's not right here, Jake. You've been working toward an opportunity like this for years. Now it's handed to you on a silver platter, and you're hesitating. That's not like you. People change, Callie. Priorities shift." He turned back to his screen. "I just need time to think it through." I stood up slowly, studying his profile in the dim office light. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. "Sure," I said quietly. "Take all the time you need. But remember, whatever you're not telling me, the truth has a way of coming out eventually." As I left the room, I could have sworn I saw him flinch. The universe has a sick sense of timing. 3 days after that disastrous dinner, Noah woke up burning with fever. I found him in his bed at 2 a.m., his dinosaur pajamas soaked through with sweat, crying softly. "Mommy, my throat hurts," he whimpered as I scooped him up. His skin felt like a hot coal against my neck. I called out for Jake, but the guest room door, where he'd been temporarily sleeping due to his back problems, remained closed. After 3 attempts at knocking, I gave up and grabbed my car keys. Some things you just handle alone. The emergency room was exactly as depressing as you'd expect at that hour. Noah dozed fitfully in my arms while I filled out paperwork, his breath coming in short, raspy bursts. When my phone finally lit up with Jake's name, it was nearly 4 a.m. "Where are you?" His voice was groggy with sleep. "The bed's empty." "We're at St. Mary's ER, I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Noah's running a fever of 103. "Thanks for asking." A pause. "Why didn't you wake me?" "I tried. 3 times. I shifted Noah to my other hip. "The doctor thinks it's strep throat. We're waiting for test results." "I'll come right now." "Don't bother," I cut him off. "We're almost done here. Just be there when we get home." Another pause. "Actually, I have an early meeting I can't reschedule. But I'll try to come home for lunch to check on him." He didn't. The next few days blurred together in a haze of medication schedules, lukewarm baths, and cancelled client meetings. Noah's fever wouldn't break, and Jake seemed to find every excuse to stay away. When he was home, he'd hover in doorways, keeping a careful distance as if Noah's illness might contaminate his carefully ordered world. On day 3, my mother showed up unannounced with soup and worried eyes. "You look exhausted, sweetheart," she said, taking in my unwashed hair and the dark circles under my eyes. "Where's Jake?" "Working late again," I replied, the words tasting bitter. "Some big project he can't talk about." She pursed her lips but didn't comment. Instead, she took over Noah duty while I showered for the first time in 2 days. When I came back downstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen counter, her expression serious. "Have you checked his phone?" she asked quietly. "Mom." "Don't mom me. I've been married 35 years. I know what a man looks like when he's hiding something." She stirred her tea methodically. "Your father was the same way that time with his secretary in '92. I sank into the chair beside her. "Dad cheated." "Tried to. I caught it early." She patted my hand. "The signs are always there if you're willing to see them." Before I could respond, Noah's cry echoed from upstairs. By the time I got him settled again, my mother had left, but her words kept echoing in my head. That night, while Jake was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I checked his phone. The screen was locked, but I knew his password, Noah's birthday. Except it didn't work. He'd changed it. I was still staring at the phone when Jake walked in, water droplets still clinging to his shoulders. His eyes darted from my face to the phone and back. "What are you doing?" His voice was carefully neutral. "Remember when we first got married?" I said, setting the phone down. "We promised no passwords between us. Nothing to hide. People need privacy, Callie." He snatched the phone up. "Even from their spouses. Like the privacy of the guest room." I stood up slowly. "Or all these late meetings. Or the way you barely look at our sick child." "Don't start this now," he warned. "Noah's finally sleeping." "When did you change your password, Jake?" He turned away, but not before I caught the flash of guilt in his eyes. "I'm going to bed. We can talk about this when you're being rational." As he walked away, my mother's words rang in my ears. The signs are always there if you're willing to see them. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. At the top, I typed, signs that Jake is hiding something. By morning, I had 2 pages of bullet points. And a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was working on a client's website redesign. The sender's name made me pause, David Collins. Subject line, about Jake Anderson. I almost deleted it, assuming it was work-related. Jake had mentioned dealing with some Collins guy at a competing firm. But something made me open it. We need to talk. In person. It's about our spouses. Coffee at Morton's, 2 p.m. today. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The knot that had been living in my stomach since that family dinner tightened. After 5 minutes of staring at the screen, I replied with one word, okay. Morton's was quiet at 2 in the afternoon. I spotted him immediately, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of tension in his shoulders that matched the heaviness in my chest. He stood when I approached. Callie Jensen. His handshake was firm, professional. Thank you for coming. We ordered coffee neither of us would drink. The silence stretched until I couldn't take it anymore. So, I said, what's this about our spouses? David pulled out his phone, swiped through it for a moment, then placed it face down on the table. How long have you suspected? Suspected what? That Jake and my wife Samantha are having an affair. The words hit like a physical blow. I'd been preparing myself for something, but hearing it stated so plainly made my vision blur at the edges. I don't. I swallowed hard. What makes you think? Because I have proof. He slid his phone across the table. I didn't want to believe it either. But sometimes the truth doesn't care what we want to believe. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. The image on screen was from what looked like security camera footage. Jake and a woman I didn't recognize, entering a hotel. The timestamp showed last Thursday, the night he'd said he was working late on quarterly reports. Keep scrolling, David said quietly. More photos followed. Jake and the woman, Samantha, at restaurants. In a park. Getting into his car. Each image was like a knife, cutting away at what I thought I knew about my life. The Seattle job, I whispered. He didn't want us to move because Samantha's based here, David finished. She works for Riverside Tech. They've been meeting there for months. I set the phone down carefully, as if it might explode. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm tired of being made a fool of, he said, leaning forward. And I'm guessing you are too. They think they're so clever, that we're too blind or stupid to see what's happening. I want them to realize how wrong they are. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop being passive victims in their little drama. His eyes met mine, and I saw my own pain reflected there. I have a plan, but I need your help. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Jake, working late again. Don't wait up. I looked at David's phone again, at the evidence of my husband's betrayal laid out in neat, time-stamped photos. Then I thought about Noah, sick and calling for his daddy while Jake was with another woman. About all the lies, the missed moments, the growing distance. Tell me about this plan, I said. David's smile was grim. First, we need to understand their patterns. When they meet, where they go. Then we. No, I interrupted. First, you need to tell me everything you know about Samantha. Every detail. If we're going to do this, we do it right. He nodded slowly, pulling out a notebook. I've been tracking their movements for weeks. They think they're careful, but they're getting sloppy. Comfortable. Good, I said, feeling something hard and cold settle in my chest where the pain had been. Let's make them uncomfortable. As David began laying out what he knew, I thought about Jake's words from that family dinner. People change. Priorities shift. He had no idea how right he was. Planning revenge over coffee feels surreal, like watching someone else's life through a window. David and I met daily at Morton's, piecing together Jake and Samantha's elaborate web of lies. Each revelation made me question how I'd missed the signs for so long. They meet every Tuesday and Thursday at the Riverside Hotel, David said, spreading out a calendar marked with dates and times. Always room 412. Always between 2 and 4. I traced the pattern of dots on the calendar. How long have you been tracking them? 3 months. He hesitated. But based on the hotel records I obtained, it's been going on for at least 8 months. I did the math in my head, right around when Noah started preschool. While I was celebrating my son's first day of school, my husband was starting an affair. There's more, David said quietly. The Seattle position. It wasn't offered to Jake out of the blue. He applied for it 6 weeks ago. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. What? Samantha's company is opening an office there too. They were planning to relocate together. He pulled out an email printout. They've already looked at apartments. My throat closed up. All those times Jake had claimed he was protecting our family by not moving, he'd been planning his escape with another woman. How did you get these emails? David's expression darkened. Let's just say Samantha isn't as careful with her passwords as she thinks. Speaking of which, he slid a small device across the table. This might help with Jake's phone. I stared at the innocent-looking USB drive. What is it? Software that can bypass most phone passwords. Just needs 30 seconds connected to his phone while it's unlocked. The old me would have been horrified at the idea of such an invasion of privacy. The new me slipped the drive into my purse without hesitation. That night, I got my chance. Jake fell asleep on the couch watching TV, his phone lying face down on the coffee table. My hands shook as I connected the drive, watching the progress bar inch forward. 28%. 56%. 84%. Jake stirred in his sleep. I froze. 98%. 100%. I yanked the drive free just as Jake's eyes fluttered open. Callie. What time is it? Just past 11, I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. You dozed off during the movie. He nodded sleepily, grabbed his phone, and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running before opening my laptop. The data dump from his phone was overwhelming. Hundreds of texts. Photos. Email chains about the Seattle move. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. We need to talk, I texted David. Now. 20 minutes later, we met in an all-night diner. I pushed my laptop across the table. Look at these bank statements. David's eyes widened as he scrolled. He's been moving money. Small amounts, every week for the past 3 months. To an account I've never seen before. My voice cracked. Nearly $50,000 so far. Samantha's been doing the same thing. David ran a hand through his hair. I thought it was just about the affair, but this. They're not just planning to leave, I said. They're planning to take everything they can first. We sat in silence, the weight of this new betrayal settling over us. Finally, David spoke. We need to move faster. Before they can finish whatever they're planning. I thought about Noah, sleeping peacefully at my mother's house. About the life Jake and I had built, the future he was trying to steal. I have an idea, I said slowly. But it's risky. And we'll only get one shot at it. David leaned forward. I'm listening. As I outlined my plan, I caught my reflection in the diner window. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, harder, colder, more determined than I'd ever been. Jake wanted to play games with our future. Fine. But he was about to learn that sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating the person you're betraying. Room 412 at the Riverside Hotel felt smaller than I'd imagined. David and I had been here for an hour, setting everything up. Now we waited, the silence broken only by the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional ping from our phones. They'll be here in 20 minutes, David said, checking his watch. You sure about this? I adjusted the tiny camera hidden in the potted plant. No. But I'm sure about what happens if we do nothing. The plan was simple, almost elegant. We'd booked the adjoining room, 414, using cash. The connecting door between the rooms was unlocked, apparently maintenance had forgotten to secure it after cleaning. At least, that's what the hotel would think when they reviewed the security footage. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake, working late again. Big presentation tomorrow. Samantha just messaged me too, David said. Claims she's at a yoga retreat. I checked the time. 2:15 p.m. Right on schedule. We moved to room 414, leaving everything in 412 exactly as we'd found it, except for our additions. The cameras. The microphones. The documents we'd carefully placed in the nightstand drawer. At 2:32, we heard them. Jake's laugh, the one I used to love, followed by a woman's giggle. Keys jingling. The door opening. David grabbed my arm as I instinctively moved toward the connecting door. Wait, he whispered. Let them get comfortable first. Through the thin wall, we could hear them moving around, talking softly. Then Jake's voice, clearer, I got the transfer set up. Another week, and we're home free. What about Callie? Samantha asked. Any suspicions? Jake's laugh again, but different now. Cruel. Please. She's too busy playing perfect mom to notice anything. By the time she figures it out, we'll be in Seattle with the money. And Daddy Dearest will be too embarrassed by his son-in-law's betrayal to do anything about it. My nails dug into my palms. David touched my shoulder, a silent reminder to stay focused. And David? Jake continued. Still clueless. Completely, Samantha replied. Men see what they want to see. Speaking of which, did you bring the papers? Right here. Once you sign these, everything's set. The new company, the accounts. It's all ready. That was our cue. David moved to the connecting door while I pulled out my phone, finger hovering over the record button. Now, he mouthed. I nodded. The door burst open. Jake and Samantha sprang apart, but not fast enough. My phone captured their expressions perfectly, shock melting into horror as they realized who stood in the doorway. Don't stop on our account, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You were just getting to the good part about the money. Jake recovered first, his charm sliding into place like a mask. Callie, honey, this isn't what it looks like. David finished, holding up his own phone. Actually, it's exactly what it looks like. And we have the last 10 minutes on video to prove it. Samantha lunged for her purse, but I was faster. Looking for these. I pulled out the documents we'd found in the nightstand. Fascinating reading. Especially the parts about embezzlement and corporate espionage. You can't prove anything, Jake snarled, but his eyes kept darting to the papers in my hand. Actually, we can. I moved closer, letting him see the fury I'd been holding back for weeks. Every transfer. Every meeting. Every lie. And in about 30 seconds, my father's going to receive an email with all of it. Jake's face went white. You wouldn't. The Jake I married. He wouldn't have stolen from my family. Or abandoned his sick child. Or planned to disappear with $50,000 and his partner's wife. I checked my phone. 20 seconds now. Wait, Samantha said, her composure cracking. We can explain. 10 seconds, David announced. Jake made a grab for my phone. I stepped back, watching as the timer hit 0. The notification popped up, email sent. You know what the funny thing is? I said, looking between their panicked faces. You were right about one thing. People do see what they want to see. And right now, I want to see you both lose everything, just like you planned to do to us. The sound of running footsteps in the hallway told me hotel security had arrived. Right on schedule. The police interview room was colder than I expected. Detective Martinez sat across from me, reviewing the evidence we'd gathered, while Jake and Samantha were questioned separately down the hall. Mrs. Jensen, Martinez said, you understand that recording someone without their knowledge could be problematic. Not in a hotel room they weren't supposed to be in, David interjected from beside me. Not when they were discussing corporate theft. My phone buzzed, a text from my father, on my way. Don't say anything else until I arrive. Too late for that. The last hour had been a blur of statements and questions, each one chipping away at the satisfaction I'd felt in room 412. Now exhaustion was setting in, along with something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like doubt. The door opened. Jake's lawyer, Sharon Chin, strode in with a familiar smile that made my stomach turn. Detective, she said, I believe we have a situation here. She placed a folder on the table. These are text messages between Mrs. Jensen and Mr. Collins, planning today's events. Including discussions about accessing private hotel rooms and planting recording devices. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Is this true? Before I could respond, Chin continued. We also have evidence that Mrs. Jensen illegally accessed my client's phone using specialized software. That's a federal offense. The room started spinning. Everything we'd planned, every careful step we'd taken to expose their betrayal, was being turned against us. Furthermore, Chen smiled, Mr. Anderson has proof that Mrs. Jensen has been transferring company funds to private accounts over the past month. We believe this was an attempt to frame him after learning about his planned move to Seattle. That's a lie. I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. He's the one who... Callie. David's warning came too late. Chen's smile widened. We have the transfer records. And witnesses who'll testify about Mrs. Jensen's recent emotional instability. Her paranoid accusations. Her obsession with monitoring her husband's activities. The detective was watching me carefully now, probably noting my shaking hands and flushed face. Everything about me screamed unstable. The door opened again. Jake walked in, his expression a perfect mask of concern. Callie, he said softly, I know you've been struggling lately. Ever since Noah got sick. Don't you dare bring Noah into this, I snarled. See what I mean? Jake turned to the detective. This is what I've been dealing with. The paranoia, the accusations. I've been trying to protect her, keep it quiet for Noah's sake, but... You manipulative bastard, David started forward, but Martinez held up a hand. Mr. Collins, please remain seated. Jake continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. I didn't want to say anything, but the money transfers, the erratic behavior. I think she needs help. Professional help. I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't help my case. You're actually trying to make me look crazy. After everything you've done. Mrs. Jensen, Martinez interrupted, we'll need to see your phone. And Mr. Collins is as well. But the evidence, I started. Has been corrupted, Chen finished. By your illegal methods of obtaining it. However, my client is willing to drop charges if you agree to certain conditions. The room went quiet. Jake pulled out a document and placed it on the table. Full custody of Noah, he said quietly. And your resignation from the company. Sign this, and everything goes away. Fight it, and... He gestured at Chen's folder of evidence. My father burst in then, bringing his own lawyers in righteous anger, but I barely heard them. All I could think about was Noah, and how thoroughly Jake had outplayed me. In trying to expose his betrayal, I'd handed him everything he needed to destroy me. The recordings, the hotel room scheme, the phone hack, all of it could be twisted to paint me as an unstable woman obsessed with false conspiracies. And now he wanted Noah. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother, Noah's asking for you. When are you coming home? I stared at Jake across the table, seeing not the man I'd married but the stranger he'd always been. Hiding behind a mask of concern while he went for the kill. The worst part. He was winning. I found Samantha in the police station's break room, staring into a cup of cold coffee. David and Jake were still with the lawyers, but I needed answers more than I needed legal protection. You knew, I said, closing the door behind me. You knew exactly what he was planning. She didn't look up. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Really? Because stealing company money and framing me for it seems pretty deliberate. That wasn't the original plan. Her hands trembled around the cup. It was supposed to be simple. Just the affair, then the move to Seattle. A clean break. What changed? Jake did. Or maybe he was always like that, and I just didn't want to see it. She finally met my eyes. He said we needed insurance. Protection. In case anyone tried to stop us. I sat across from her, close enough to see the mascara tracks on her cheeks. And framing me was your insurance. He said you'd never let him have Noah. That you'd use your father's influence to destroy him. She laughed bitterly. God, I was so stupid. I actually believed I was helping him escape a controlling wife. The door opened. Jake stood there, his lawyer hovering behind him. Samantha, he said sharply. We're not done with our statement. Actually, she pulled out her phone, we are. Jake's face changed as she pressed play. His voice filled the room. Once Callie takes the fall for the missing money, her father won't have a choice. He'll have to distance himself completely. No custody battle, no support, nothing. When was this? I asked. Last week. When he told me the real plan. Samantha's voice hardened. About how he'd been setting this up for months. The fake transfer records, the witnesses who testify about Callie's instability, all of it prepared long before we ever went to that hotel room. Jake lunged for the phone, but Samantha was faster. She hit forward on the recording, and Samantha. Once we're in Seattle, we won't need her either. She served her purpose. The lawyer behind Jake cleared her throat. Mr. Anderson, I suggest we. You recorded me. Jake's charm vanished, replaced by something ugly. You stupid. I'm not the only one, Samantha cut in. David. My unlikely ally appeared in the doorway, holding up a USB drive. Amazing what people say when they think they're alone in a hotel room. Especially before their mistress arrives. Jake's face went white. You were there early. An hour early, David confirmed. Got everything. Your calls to the fake witnesses. Your conversations with the offshore account managers. Even your little practice session for today's concerned husband performance. Detective Martinez appeared behind David, expression grim. Mr. Anderson, we need to continue our discussion. You can't prove, Jake started. Actually, my father's voice boomed from the hallway, we can prove quite a bit. Including the real transfer records you tried to delete. My IT team sends their regards. Jake's composure cracked. He spun toward me, desperation replacing confidence. Callie, you can't let them. Can't let them what? Tell the truth. I stood up slowly. You know what's funny? If you'd just asked for a divorce, I would have given you one. If you'd been honest about Samantha, we could have handled it like adults. But you couldn't do that, could you? You had to try to take everything, my son, my reputation, my family's company. I deserve more, he snarled. After everything I've done. The only thing you've done, I interrupted, is show everyone exactly who you really are. As the detective led Jake away, Samantha touched my arm. I know it doesn't help, but I'm sorry. For all of it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the other woman who'd helped destroy my marriage, but another victim of Jake's manipulations. You're right, I said. It doesn't help. But testifying against him will. She nodded, determination replacing guilt in her eyes. I'll tell them everything. Outside the break room, David waited with a slight smile. Ready to go home. I thought about Noah, about the life I needed to rebuild, about the strength I'd found in the midst of betrayal. Yes, I said. I really am. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, watching Noah play with his toys in the corner I'd set up just for him. The divorce papers had been finalized yesterday, the same day Jake's plea deal was announced. Corporate fraud carried a surprisingly heavy sentence, especially when coupled with attempted extortion. My phone buzzed, a text from David, Samantha's testimony went well. Prosecutor says it's the final nail in Jake's coffin. I didn't reply immediately. David and I had developed an odd friendship through all this, bound by shared betrayal and unexpected victory. But lately, his texts had been coming more frequently, carrying hints of something I wasn't ready to consider. Mommy, look. Noah held up his latest Lego creation. It's a castle. That's beautiful, sweetheart. I moved to examine his masterpiece, marveling at how resilient children could be. He barely asked about Jake anymore, though I knew that would change as he got older. I'd already started practicing what I'd tell him when the questions came. My father appeared in the doorway, looking more relaxed than he had in months. Ready for the board meeting. After Jake's arrest, Dad had insisted I take a more active role in the company. Time to stop hiding behind that web design business, he'd said. Show everyone what you're really capable of. Almost, I replied, gathering my notes. Just need to drop Noah at Mom's. Actually, he cleared his throat, your mother's already here. She's waiting in the conference room. With Samantha. I froze. What? Samantha asked to speak with you. Said it was important. He studied my face carefully. You don't have to. No, it's okay. I turned to Noah. Ready to see Grandma. After settling Noah with my mother, I found Samantha in the conference room, looking both professional and nervous in a crisp business suit. I'm starting my own company, she said without preamble. Digital security consulting. Using everything I learned from this mess to help other businesses protect themselves. Congratulations, I said carefully. But why are you telling me? Because I want to partner with your father's company. And because. She hesitated, I wanted you to hear it from me first. Before the rumors start. Rumors. David and I are trying again. Counseling, fresh start, the whole thing. She met my eyes. I know how it looks, especially to you. But sometimes people deserve second chances. I thought about the past 6 months, the therapy sessions, the nights spent rebuilding my confidence, the slow process of learning to trust again. Sometimes they do, I agreed. But not always. She nodded, understanding the unspoken message about Jake. I know. That's why I wanted to ask you directly, can you work with me? Knowing everything that happened. The old me would have said no immediately. The old me would have clung to righteous anger and suspicion. But I wasn't that person anymore. Let me see your proposal, I said. We'll start there. Later, after the board meeting where Samantha's partnership was tentatively approved, I found myself alone in my office again. Noah's Lego castle still sat in the corner, a reminder of how children could build beautiful things from broken pieces. My phone buzzed once more, David, asking about coffee next week. This time, I replied, maybe. But let's take it slow. The sun was setting over the city as I packed up to leave, casting long shadows across my desk. In one of them, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, stronger, sharper. More defined than the woman who'd sat at a family dinner 6 months ago, watching her world crack apart. Jake had tried to destroy me, but he'd only succeeded in forcing me to rebuild myself, stronger than before. The revenge I'd sought had transformed into something else, not just justice, but growth. Noah was waiting with my mother in the lobby, clutching a new drawing. Look, Mommy. It's our family. I studied the crayon figures, me, Noah, my parents, and several others I couldn't quite identify. The page was messy, complicated, full of overlapping lines and uncertain boundaries. Just like real life. It's perfect, I told him, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it.